Hi, I am Chitra.
I am Madhvi.
I'm Jyothi.
I'm Suchitra.
Together, we are your hosts.
On the Aedge podcast.
We bring you stories and experiences.
From our experiments around learning, marketing, and design.
These are stories of people, technology,
And people interacting through technology.
Of what we see, create,
and recommend.
A claque is a group of professional applauders positioned in theatres or opera houses. Clackers, that is, members of a claque, have been used since Emperor Nero, whose performances were applauded by 5,000 soldiers. Their job was to applaud a performance, encouraging others to do the same. Cut to the 21st century, products or services place fake reviews and biased ratings or include celebrity testimonials to influence people's purchasing decisions. Humans have since the beginning looked out for social proof. We never quite leave behind that tendency to look at others for clues when we are uncertain or confused about what to do in a situation.
Hello and welcome to the Aedge podcast. Today, here is another episode of the Rarely Rational series. Joining me to brew some interesting conversations on this bias is my cool co host Jyothi. Hi, Jyothi.
Hi, Suchi.
And in today's episode, we have a guest with us who is a techie, UX person, and is full of Josh. How is your Josh kind of person and wit? And it is our epic storyteller, Chitra Gurjar. Hi, Chitra.
Hi, Suchi. Hi, Jyothi. That was a very kind and generous welcome. Thank you so much.
We're glad to have you back in this episode, Chitra.
Yeah, glad to be here. This series, I think, has been very interesting. I hope listeners are finding it interesting as well. But it's really piqued my curiosity. So thanks to the two of you for keeping this going. And let's see what we can talk about today.
That's great. So, without much ado, let's get started. Have you ever heard of this Jolo chip challenge?
Yeah, we did something like that in office, right?
Yeah. In office the other day, our teammates were talking about this Jolo chip challenge, and I was like super confused. What actually this? I was thinking about some technical stuff, but the challenge is you need to eat a spiciest chili chip, just one chip, okay? And that would cost you like close to 200 rupees. And after taking that chip, you can't even have water, speech, or any other stuff. And it was trending then, and everyone wanted to try that. I was kind of puzzled. Why would anyone do this? And I think our colleagues also took up this challenge as it was a trend. So, can you imagine someone spending rupees 200 for a chip, and that may have some effect on your health too? Just because everyone was doing it, we were tempted to do so, right? So the reason I wanted to talk about this Jolo chip challenge is so we just get tempted to do something just because a group of people are doing it and or it is a trend. So in today's episode, we are going to talk about a bias that is something very similar to the experience that we discussed. So in today's episode, we will be talking about the bandwagon effect. Jyoti, do you have any idea as what this bandwagon effect is?
Yeah, I think the tendency of doing something just because other people are already doing, or it is how a particular idea can become famous or is adopted just because a majority of people are behaving in the same way, right? So, Jolo Chip Challenge was a good example
Yeah.
of how, our own teammates,
Given to the trend.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have another scenario, I think we've commonly seen in our streets where you see a crowds thronging these construction sites and kind of seeing these excavators digging. It starts with, like, say, one person, and then gradually more people just go there and stand just to see, a seemingly mundane activity. But apparently, this also is a social experiment which was conducted to show that how social proof or this kind of jumping on the bandwagon to do a particular thing. So, this is probably an example that I wanted to share of how I have seen, this bandwagon effect in a day to day life.
Yeah, it's pretty much the thought like, okay, just because they are doing it, you can also do it, and it's pretty safe. Yeah, that's the bias we are talking about today.
Yeah. So, Chitra, do you have any experience like that?
Yeah, certainly. And I think all of us have had it. And, to just what Suchi said now, to feel safe. I think fundamentally, and I think we've spoken about these, where this stems from in some previous episodes.
Mhm.
As human beings, we're social beings, like you said, Jyoti, and we all have a need to belong. And that need to belong, once it's satisfied, also results in the feeling of safety in numbers, right? It's a very, very basic instinct or a feeling that all of us as human beings have. And the other thing being that we always want to be on the winning side, right? In fact, we see this playing out. Politicians exploit this quite heavily. And I believe that's where the term, the bandwagon effect, came from when in the early 19th century, somebody actually started touring around and adding drama to literally a wagon. And people started hopping on because they wanted to be part of the fun and frolic that was associated with what this man was doing. And politicians began to observe that and picked it up and began to drive their campaigns in similar fashions and so on. We certainly see this. I think I've succumbed to it, especially when I was younger. In school, you want to belong to groups. So once one person actually starts doing something, or a group of people start doing something, everybody jumps on because you want to be part of it. You don't want to feel excluded or left out. And I think in today's day and age, it's both a good thing and a bad thing. I wouldn't qualify it actually that way. There are two sides to any such behavioral tendency, right? One can have a positive outcome, the other can have a not so positive outcome. So to come back to my own experience, I think in my career, when I have seen decisions or being made about what the next feature in a product should be, I think it's played out both ways. On the one hand, there was this one particular feature we were debating as to whether to put it in a product. We knew that it was fairly complex. It would take a lot of time and due diligence by the development team to ensure that it fit into the larger ecosystem of the product. It was going to take time. And what we really didn't have was a line of sight into how many customers were actually asking for it. We were sort of relying on very little information at that time. So this is the factual part of the situation. The other part was, it was a large cross-functional team. They were close to about 140 engineers on this whole project. Sales team pressure was there, saying that we will realize a couple of $100 million of revenue over the next few months. So there were different kind of factors playing in, and one could very clearly see the dynamic in the room when the decision was being taken in terms of whether to build this product or whether to defer it. Yes, there was due consideration in terms of the risks, in terms of the revenue, in terms of the time to deliver, and all of those factors. But what I did notice was that there was a tendency to want to do it versus considering giving or doing due diligence on the facts of the matter. So this is why I say there's no good outcome or bad outcome. We eventually signed up to do it. It took almost double the time than estimated. It ultimately didn't bring in as much revenue. But at that time, the mood of the room was, okay, everybody wants to make a go of it. Let's make a go of it. And classically, that's how the decision got made. Bandwagon effect. So yeah, there you go. That's my experience.
So, Chitra, we have been talking about all these personal experiences and the career related or our professional experiences, right? So, I'm quite curious to know how this bandwagon effect has an impact on the UX industry, because we are doing a lot of episodes on the UX and the experiences and the research, right? So, what do you think, or how is it impacting the UX industry?
Thank you for that question, Suchi. I think in user experience design, this is something that we all have to be aware of. I can't say that we can completely eliminate it. It's just a function of the society that we live in and the ecosystem that we're surrounded with. So I'll start with talking about, let's say, user research, which is probably the first step in any experience design that you do. What if you are actually sitting in front of a person who already is coming with this bias to the table and answering your questions? How do you deal with that? So let's say you have a product which is competing, for the sake of simplicity, with the likes of an Instagram, okay? And you're trying to build what you think is a better product than Instagram. And the person you're talking to constantly constantly says that, oh, but Instagram's already out there. I get everything that I want. The latest and greatest designers and chefs, and they're all there. People are conducting business on Instagram, so why should I move from there? How would you deal with a situation like that? How would you continue to ask your questions? One of the things that can happen in a situation like this, you actually come away because the person is so strong about their beliefs in the power of a certain product and its capabilities that you actually come away with nothing. But how do you stay in that conversation and probe a little deeper? So, for example, if this person is continually insisting on the fact that Instagram is going to be their go-to channel for the way they conduct business, or that will be their first social media platform of choice to market their products and solutions, I think you can start by asking what makes you think so. Start with a question and then go on to what we've talked about in earlier episodes is the 5 whys. Why do you think that way? What makes it so special? So then that gives you insights into things like perceived ease of use, the fact that, some of us, me included, I have a few apps on my phone and I just want to continue using them. I don't want to uninstall them and move on to something new. It could be a lot of those factors. So I think the ability to recognize that the person you are interviewing in the course of a user research exercise is being influenced by this effect can, you can counter that by staying in the conversation a little longer, by steering the questions, making them a little more open-ended, showing genuine curiosity and enthusiasm to investigate why this individual is heading in a particular direction or not. The second case is where, let's say, there are a group of designers, engineers, and a product development team that's sitting in a room and trying to brainstorm about ways of solving a problem. So typical things when you encounter groupthink. Groupthink is an effect of is an outcome of the bandwagon effect. Is you'll see people saying that, oh, I thought of the same idea too. Oh, this is a great idea. Oh, this was my idea. This was, something that I came across. And you'll see these things. And at that point, I think use the same technique is, while that's a fabulous idea, what made you think about it? And it completely then can shift the focus of the mood from being one of, hey, let's join this bandwagon and let's just get done with it. Let's all sign up for it and let's make this happen, to let's look at it a little bit objectively. What are we trying to solve? One of the things is a technique that I've used often is, how do you think that what you're suggesting will impact our product? Because very often in such discussions, in the anxiousness to get consensus, or, we are running short of time and we really have to make a decision on this, there are various factors that play into it. Or there is too much information, there is information overload and people quickly want to sift through it and, get done with the decision. Ask the question saying, how do you think this will solve the problem? Another question could be, where do you think that, what are the pros and cons of such a situation? Right. So these are a few simple tips in these situations that could help to counter the bandwagon effect. But one thing that I also want to say is that the bandwagon effect, like any other thing, has two sides to it. The other side is when we are building products and designing for great user experiences, we long for social proof. Right? We want somebody to come back and say, hey, your product was great. And not only somebody, we want lots of people to come back and say, your product was great. And you want people to recommend it. And that's how you want to grow your business and so on. So it's a double-edged sword in some sense. Right. But I think if designers are cognizant of it, you will also find ways of navigating it.
I think breaking the group think will probably give you better ideas to emerge out there. And especially if, like you said, right, in the ideation process, when we are sitting together in a group and trying to come up with ideas in designing, and if you think about the UX life cycle, and in the process where we are brainstorming, thinking or questioning why a particular idea is nice or different will help us get more solutions to our problem, rather than just saying, okay, I also thought about the same and let's stick to the same idea. Right? I think social proof was a good point that you brought up when you spoke about recommendations and testimonials. If we see how marketers use this bandwagon effect for increasing conversions or sales, I think the whole concept of reviews and ratings have emerged out of this cognitive bias that people use, right? More good ratings or more reviews that a product shows, the more number of people try to accept that product just because the majority view says that the product is good.
Yes, and I think that's one of it's a fact that we just have to accept today. It's a situation rather than a fact. I would say it's a situation that we have to accept today. But I think as long as we're aware of what's coming to the forefront. For example, in the last couple of years, I've realized that the more I see something being rated and highly reviewed and 5 stars all over the place, I'd rather have a tendency to take a step back and actually talk to people, if I can, who have actually experienced it. And what I've realized is you're more likely to get a more grounded opinion, what I like to call. They will share with you pros and cons. And then I feel that at least empowers me to take a more informed decision. I feel, I'm not as clouded as it were by saying that everybody is going for it. And so let me go and watch it, or let me go and experience it. Sorry. And I said watch it because this happens a lot in the realm of TV shows and films also. There's a whole lot of people that say that, hey, don't watch this. It's really a waste of time. And I've oftentimes found, just experimenting, that when you go and watch it, it isn't all that bad as they said it was. So so those are things that I'm consciously doing now. It's helped me develop my own view of things.
Right.
I think this thought process also comes with the experience, Chitra. But I think in the recent times, we were also talking about the social media impact and all, right? For the marketing, people do use Instagram, as you were just quoting. So what happens is there are a lot of influencers who get this paid partnership, and as they start promoting or do some publicity for this product, people think, okay, the celebrity or the influencers are using it, and then you could also try this. So what's your thought on this, Jyothi and Chitra?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the current social media age, I have definitely used a lot of products based on, YouTube recommendations, or you have experts talk about a particular product. For example, say gadgets, YouTubers who are experts in reviewing such products and talking about any services in such a good way that they market it well. And these kind of testimonials are also building up a lot of revenue to brands and companies, right? For example, if I have to see Amazon, the reviews, it's not just limited to people just rating those 5 stars or 4 stars. The way they include videos with people actually showing the product and saying how it has been delivered to them, and the whole unboxing of a particular product. I think all are definitely have influenced me in buying something that I want to. And like you said, it's a double-edged sword. So I do have seen the positive side of this, and I will jump into the bandwagon eventually and say, okay, if so many people are right, it might be right, kind of a mood there.
So that has pushed you in buying products because of the bandwagon effect.
Yes, definitely. I do in a lot of cases rely on such reviews. Yeah, you have to be careful, probably think twice, but at least nowadays, I mean, I think there are brands, at least, are being cautious in trying to differentiate between, they even say whether he is a verified buyer or not against, any review given. So I think these small aspects of the way an app is delivered also makes a lot of difference for a user or a customer.
Yeah, I think to add to what Jyothi said is, I think at the end of the day, like if you're talking about unboxing videos, and especially for products, I'd say gadgets, if I were to go with that, rather than, I recently got a new computer and my criteria were very specific. It's got to be lightweight. I can't carry heavy laptops anymore. I knew the kind of work that I'd be doing. And so I was pretty clear on what specifications I wanted in the machine. And affordability for me was a big factor as well. So while, I went through a couple of people who did the unboxing and gave reviews on certain products, I did notice one thing after watching 2 or 3 people doing this, is that there was an element of authenticity and genuineness. They weren't actually only trying to sell the product, or while they were getting paid by various brands for doing it, what I appreciated was that they brought a degree of authenticity to the whole video that somehow came through. It was not that they were obsessively trying to sell one over the other or not. And I really appreciated the fact that they said, consider your needs. Keep your needs. What is it that you are looking for, rather than just going for what people are saying about the brand?
Yeah.
And I think to me as a consumer, that would matter. And I think if I were wearing the hat of a person in charge of a product, I'd do the same thing. I'd very clearly say what it can do. I'd very clearly say what it can't do as well. And I think, and leave it there. This is my view.
Yeah. Another example I think I thought of is in how, these services use, for example, say Netflix. There are so many choices for you to choose from. And I like these are what most of the users have been watching, or, the top 10 in India or top 10 around your locality. That kind of a list that a lot of brands have come up with, or examples like, along with this purchase, these are what most people have been, buying.
Jyothi, I still feel that's the bandwagon effect.
Yeah, it is. It is actually. It is definitely the bandwagon effect. That's how they are using, right? And trying to influence people to, I'm trying to say like how maybe these services are introducing this bandwagon effect to kind of make it easy for people to make a choice in a place where there is a lot of
we're spoiled for
choices. Exactly.
So to this, I just want to go back and say I was thankful. I was blissfully choiceless when I was growing up. I think I realize the value of being in a state like that today, because I see that people, when they have too much choice, I think that information overload is something that tends to then result in something like a bandwagon effect, isn't it?
True. And I also remember about our conversation in a previous episode, Jyoti, about the hyperbolic discounting, right? So the moment you are showing multiple choices, instead of just spending 500, you end up spending 1,500, which could have been in your account as well, right? So I think all these are the marketing techniques that people use, but yes, ideally we all fall into that effect.
This has been a really interesting and fun conversation so far. And since we started with the Jolo Chip Challenge, it has to do with food and drink, something that's pervasive in our lives to a large extent. I'd like to just talk about various diet fads and what to eat and what not to eat, and things that particularly caught our attention, rather gripped us, especially during the 2.5 years of the pandemic. I used to often wonder, why is it that people are paying so much attention to food and drink? And you've been eating a certain kind of food for a very long time in your life. And why do you want to suddenly change? Because somebody is saying something about it. And I must confess here that there have been times when I've fallen victim to it as well. For example, what they started calling turmeric latte. This haldi doodh that we've probably grown up on, and our mothers and grandmothers have been giving it to us for decades. Suddenly, out of nowhere, this was usually something I'd have if I have a cold or a cough, or if somebody at home has a similar situation. And then for no reason at all, I started drinking it every night. And then after about 2 months, I said, what am I doing? Because it was actually making me feel a little uncomfortable. It's just that I don't tolerate milk too well. But just because others were doing it, I found myself doing it. So yeah, I think foods, and I think I have to leave this statement by saying, I wonder when they say eat what grows in your area and eat what is produced closest to you, I think it makes sense. Locally, because the minute you start going that extra or putting that extra effort to buy something which is really grown thousands and thousands of kilometers away from you,
True.
In this day and age, when we talk about sustainability and reducing a carbon footprint, I think we need to be all the more cognizant of a bandwagon effect when we buy things that we need in our day-to-day lives. And I think one of the ways, like I mentioned choicelessness earlier, to also counter this effect to a large extent is try to see what has worked for so many years, right? And why are we suddenly changing? Why are we suddenly latching on to something? I think I leave myself with this question and it helps me. So I hope it can help others as well.
No, I think this is something we'll have to think through, Chitra, as you rightly said, because see, we didn't have much of choice, but currently we have a lot of choice. We had our usual breakfasts and routines. Currently, there is something called intermittent fasting, keto diet, GM diet, and the protein powders. And then you have cereals, and people are involving or buying more of organic products. And you don't even know if it's purely organic, right? But just because it's organic, everybody wants to buy it. I think that's again the bandwagon effect or bandwagon diet, we should call. So, as you rightly said, we need to question ourselves because Jyoti and I also had a conversation about the 40s, the new 20. So you want to add some points to this, Jyoti?
I think social media is just giving us more and more challenges, more and more trends to fall on, more and more hashtags to adhere to. And yeah, there are so many things like, 30s are the new 20s or 40s are the new 30s. I mean, maybe everyone wants to, I don't know, is it an effect of people wanting to be younger or trying to be more cooler by.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the sense of belonging, the need to feel a sense of belonging, the need to feel a sense of safety and security in numbers, and the need to feel included.
Yes.
I think if we keep these in mind at being the base of a lot of these biases, it'll be helpful. I'm not saying that these are wrong. This is who we are as social sentient human beings on this
Yes.
planet. This is how we've lived for all the years that we've been on this planet. So you can't really do away with it. But if we are mindful about it, I think we'll find ways of managing it.
It is worth challenging our biases and examining them with a critical lens in context so that we can make informed decisions and solve problems.
Thank you, Jyoti and Suchi. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you, Chitra. Thanks for joining
Chitra.
this time. Stay tuned to the Aedge podcast for the next series of episodes on cognitive biases. Until then, keep asking the question, is that rational?
Please subscribe to the Aedge podcast on your favorite podcast channel. We are on Google, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and more. If you liked this episode, please share it with your friends. If you have stories to share and want to be featured on our podcast, write to us at podcasts@adepticlabs.com.